The 11-metre $250,000 patrol boat is fitted out to meet a new role for the Fisheries Department. Under a Commonwealth agreement, the Hunter is contracted to patrol outside the 3-mile state limit to the 200-mile territorial limit. The Hunter is one of half a dozen new vessels joining the Fisheries fleet and will patrol waters between Seal Rocks and Port Hacking, as well as the new offshore fishing areas. With a range of 500 miles and a top speed of 22 knots, the Hunter's designed to keep up with the industry.
In the old days, we did have Japanese longliners working here, but the Australian fleet itself was limited to the inshore area, but now they fish as far as the continental shelf, and in the case of the yellowfin tuna longline fishery, they go outside the Australian fishing zone.
Agriculture Minister Jack Hallam says the Hunter will play an important role in law enforcement and fisheries protection. He congratulated the police for their support of the fisheries inspectors both on and off the water, adding that the extended coastal limits posed a different kind of hazard for the inspectors. He says they now face a real risk of stumbling onto illegal drug trade itself.
Well, I suppose that's always a possibility with our huge shoreline and with the responsibilities up to the 200-mile limit. You couldn't deny that that's a prospect, probably a small possibility, but it's something which is there, and I suppose we need to be aware of.
Senior fisheries officers say the chance of uncovering drug runners are slim, and the Hunter will be limited to more mundane but important work, managing the state's $70 million a year fishing industry.
Is profoundly deaf, but she has not let that stop her from guiding. She began as a youngster in Brownies and managed to attain virtually every badge available. From then it was on to Girl Guides, where she won the BP award before joining Ranger Guides. As a ranger, she achieved the Queen's Guide Award, and while she was doing that, she also managed to secure the Junior Leader Certificate. Currently, she works with the Brownie unit, leading children aged 7 to 10 years. Today, her efforts paid off with the presentation of the McDonald's Post Achievement Award.
You ought to carry a whole box of them.
It was day 2 of the championship today. This morning the sun shone brightly, but by lunchtime the rain started to come down. Rules state that the rounds must go on, except in the case of lightning. The rain caused most rounds today to be 3 to 4 shots more than yesterday. Outright leader after today's second round is Lester Peterson of New South Wales on 2 under 142. Next is Toronto 17-year-old Wayne Stewart, 1 stroke back on 143. Current Australian champ David Ecob is another stroke back on 144, with Chris Longley of New South Wales, who fired today's best round of 69. 3 strokes off the pace are a group of 4 on 145, including defending champion Shane Robinson and Belmont's Keith White. The field has been cut back to 60 players, who will play the final 2 rounds tomorrow.
Lake Macquarie's pollution problem is one which environmentalists are determined to solve. But despite studies already carried out on sedimentation, urban runoff, sewage outfall and the discharge of household wastes, the lake is without a management scheme governed by one authority. Dr. Jim Croft is the chairman of the Board of Environmental Studies at Newcastle University and took part in a recent survey of the lake's most endangered areas. He says there is a growing concern about the lack of action to clean up the lake, but believes there is a solution.
There needs to be a management plan for the management of the whole lake. At present, the management is arranged between some 8 or 9 government departments and Lake Macquarie City Council. I think they each do their own things, and in many respects I think they're doing a reasonable job. But nobody is responsible for the overall coordination of this activity. And it seems to me until we get some coordination of all these efforts within the framework of a management plan, we're not going to get progress.
Dr Croft says such a plan is the normal procedure for areas environmentally threatened and believes the Council has failed to take the proper initiatives.
I think that some measure of leadership could well indeed come from the Council, and for too long the Council has taken a backward position and tended to push the blame onto the other departments. So I think now with the new Council here, most people are looking to this Council to come out and show a bit of leadership and show that they're really concerned and interested in the lake.
Morpeth's maritime history was recognised today during a visit to the town by two Polish officers off the tall ship Dharma Jersey. While here, the two men also acknowledged Maitland's Polish community.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
If you've ever wanted to foretell the future, a new do-it-yourself board game called Fortune Teller may hold the answers. The game is the idea of clairvoyant Trish Cerezo, who predicts its success will follow other popular party games like Monopoly and Trivial Pursuit.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
This is the new game that's just hit the shelves and is selling like hotcakes. Complete with an instruction book, Fortune Teller was designed by clairvoyant Trish Cerezo. The concept is based on actual psychic readings that are given when an ordinary pack of cards are dealt. Trish says instead of following suits to discover opportunities in fortune and fame, pitchers can now tell the story with the same degree of accuracy.
To a certain point, because, no clairvoyant can be totally, 100% accurate. So the accuracy rating is about 75%.
There are two games to follow Fortune Teller, one based on numerology, the other on astrology. And it's expected all three will soon appear at party games in lounge rooms across Australia. Although the idea developed from her Wollongong home, Trish predicts sales will go even further.
Well, hopefully, we've been very, very lucky because we've been told it's so difficult to get a game, launched. And the response so far has been very, very good. We've got a London company who's going to do it. They're going to market it all over the world for us. So it's going to be going through most countries in the world.
Trish says the game, retailing for just under $30, is harmless if played in fun, and warns against anyone taking Fortune Teller too seriously.
I always feel no fortune telling should be taken too seriously. I believe that you should cross your bridges as you come to them and not look too far ahead into the future, because I have seen some people's lives totally ruined, through wrong predictions.
Multiculturalism is socially dividing Australians. The Australian Chamber of Commerce also says Australia should take in more immigrants. The Newcastle Chamber agrees, but according to Executive Director Graham Jeffries, people coming to live in Australia should be prepared to swear allegiance.
What I'm saying is the Australian Chamber of Commerce supports the view that we bring in the right type of people, that we just not meet policies that are obviously being more emotional than logic in their output, in that we're not looking at bringing in those people that do not have any future within the countries and that they may have a future here.
So who would you say are the wrong sort of people to come to Australia?
Well, it's not a case for me to say who the wrong people is. That's what to the immigration people in the respective countries to make sure that they screen these people properly, so that in fact those people who are coming into the country do have the qualifications to meet the Australian needs.
According to the chairman of the Migrant Resource Centre at Hamilton, Faith Trent, multiculturalism brings Australians together, and she says it's very difficult to become
I respond
an
by saying
Australian
that they
resident.
are. We have one of the more thorough screening processes in the world, and it's one of the more difficult countries to get into. And the immigration policy is arrived at by having a look at the necessity for social cohesion and for the economic gain of the community at large. So we actually only bring in people who have the skills that we need, or who will provide the sort of stable family backgrounds that will allow communities to survive.
Do you think perhaps he could have been talking about refugees?
I guess it's possible, but we have very...
During their visit to Morpeth, the two officers off the Dharma jersey presented a plaque to Maitland Mayor Alderman Peter Blackmore. The Maitland City Council is rebuilding Morpeth Wharf to enable the William IV to visit. The wharf should be finished in April. However, Alderman Blackmore is still waiting for confirmation that the vessel will come to the town. In the meantime, he was delighted today with the visit by the Polish tall ship officers.
It commemorates the importance that Morpeth played with the early mercantile shipping. It was the first port that was established outside of Sydney, and as this is the bicentennial year, we've felt very honoured that the officers of the Dharma jersey have been able to come here and at least give Morpeth the correct exposure that it deserves. As you know, the river is now silted up, so shipping is out of the question. But when we go back to the start of our history of this great nation, to think that Morpeth was the first port, it just shows the importance that it did play to the Hunter Valley and of course to Maitland in general.
The officers also proved welcome guests for Morpeth's Polish community. After spending some time with their countrymen and women, the officers made a speedy journey back to Sydney.
We will be taking part in the parade of sail next day, which is on Tuesday. And this is a very important event for all of us, and I believe for Australia.
January 26 is traditionally the day of the year when patriotism abounds and colonial dress is not considered out of place in any situation. The 200th since the colony was founded will of course be the biggest yet, although celebrations in Newcastle today will be limited. Because of the enormous number of people who will travel to Sydney, organisers say activities here have been designed to provide something different. Johnny Allen, Newcastle Bicentennial Coordinator.
There are two highlights. One is a very special church service at Newcastle Cathedral, 9 in the morning, and we've got several things planned for that. It'll be a very special service indeed. Then through the day we've got a colonial picnic up at King Edward Park, organised by the Australia Day Council, and it'll have bush music, Aussie games and a lot of different attractions. That goes from 12 noon through to about 5 in the afternoon.
And events here are really just a lead up to our regatta weekend.
We're building up now to the regatta at the weekend. It's Newcastle's oldest celebration. It goes back to 1845, and for a few years we've been building up to this regatta, so it's got a couple of very special elements to it. There'll be more sail on Newcastle Harbour than there probably has been since the turn of the century. We've got 3 steam trains coming up from Sydney for a whole heritage transport display, and we've got the biggest fireworks on Saturday night certainly that Newcastle ever has seen and will again for a long time.
Council's first full meeting for the year was not destined to be an easy one. Labor aldermen and independents split again, this time over the appointment of a new city engineer. The council had called for applications for the job under the employ of the council, and Don Cross, the previous deputy engineer, was chosen. Last night, the Deputy Mayor, Gordon Hughes, moved to have his position made contractual, a proposal which evoked heated response from the Labor aldermen.
Right, he would be appointed, he's not the engineer.
The motion was eventually carried, however was immediately rescinded, and the position still remains undefined. The council was also unable to reach a firm decision on the future of the numerous community halls around the lake. The halls have been under a shadow since a Board of Fire Commissioners report condemned Nord's Wharf as unsuitable as a childcare venue. The council has many similar halls in a similar condition and now faces massive outlays if each one is to be brought up to the safety standards set by the board. The board recommendations on 7 halls in the area for the recladding, fitting crash doors and in some cases re-roofing amounted to $240,000. However, the council has asked for a more detailed breakdown of the necessary alterations and costings. The council plans to advise community groups that the halls must not be used for childcare activities until the matter is resolved, and Mayor Ivan Welsh says some may be forced to close.
It is possible, but I've asked the heads of department to look at a revised budget where we may be able to do something about this, and that's ongoing now.
Not all the sails are on Sydney Harbour today. Some of the state's best sailors have forsaken the spectacle of Sydney's aquatic revelries for the quiet excitement of Lake Munmora's annual Odie Classic.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6. Parties today as people cram buses, trains and boats to make for the best vantage point for viewing the celebrations. But it was the Prince and Princess of Wales who had the box seat for the festivities, arriving by barge at Farm Cove. Among the many speeches, Prime Minister Hawke reminded Australians of the past.
Been built here and achieved here over the past 200 years. And it is not only the common bond of institutions, standards, language and culture. Indeed, in today's Australia, our very diversity is an ever-growing source of our richness, vitality and the strength of our community. It is true that all these things that I've mentioned go to shape the Australian character and to define the Australian identity. Yet, beyond them, there remains one vital factor in the answer to the question, who is an Australian? And that factor is a commitment to Australia and to its future. It is that common commitment which binds the Australian born of the 7th or 8th generation and all those of their fellow Australians born in any of the 130 countries from which our people are drawn. In Australia, there is no hierarchy of descent. There must be no privilege of origin. The commitment is all.
The Princess had dressed especially for the fine weather, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and matching sunglasses. She was obviously determined not to have another dose of sunburn, as she did in her last visit to Australia. In his speech, Prince Charles said he was delighted to be back in Australia.
The modern nation of Australia began here 200 years ago today. They were harsh beginnings, and the people who were sent here against their will had little cause to rejoice. And all that was just yesterday. As history goes, 200 years is barely a heartbeat. Yet look around you and see what has happened in that time. A whole new free people. The people of a whole new free country, Australia. If it takes regular visitors from an old country to help you decide whether you should be celebrating or not, my wife and I will be glad to be of assistance.
"41-year-old Pamela Young, charged with the murder of her Macquarie Hills husband early this year, appeared in Newcastle local court today. She was remanded on continuing bail. The hearing was adjourned until next month.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Hello, I'm Ross Hampton. A delegation from Newcastle's sister city in England, Newcastle upon Tyne, arrived today for a 6-day visit. They were welcomed at Newcastle City Hall, and their first official function will be a genuine Australian barbecue tonight.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
The roundup of automatic and semi-automatic weapons continues amid claims by Agriculture Minister Jack Hallam that the opposition is misinforming farmers on how the gun laws will affect them. Mr Hallam says farmers stand to benefit from the new laws.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Following weeks of police investigations, Pamela Young was charged 8 days ago with the murder of her 43-year-old husband. On New Year's Eve, Mrs Young alleged a gunman had held her hostage and then kidnapped Malcolm James Young at their Macquarie Hills home. She then told police the gunman forced her to drive the family car to dense scrubland near Mount Sugarloaf, where she later managed to escape. The burnt-out vehicle was found a few days later with the charred remains of a male body in the boot. An autopsy which revealed the man had died from a gunshot wound to the head failed to positively identify the body. However, police strongly believe it was that of the missing man. Mrs Young joined family and friends in her hometown of Lithgow, where she was arrested last week after police searched a house and found 2 rifles. After appearing in Lithgow local court, the hearing was adjourned to Newcastle. Today, Mrs Young was accompanied by close family friends. During the hearing, the police prosecutor asked the magistrate to adjourn proceedings, allowing more time to prepare his case. Although Mrs Young made only a brief appearance, her mother and 2 children accompanied her to court, where they looked on proceedings from the gallery. Magistrate Gilbert adjourned the hearing after no changes were sought to Mrs Young's continuing bail of $600.
It takes time for things to develop. You don't expect to have immediate results. But I think there will be a lot of things coming out of it in terms of educational exchanges. I hope perhaps we can arrange for teachers.
In the news tonight, Newcastle was the venue for a lunch attended by the civic leaders of 4 cities. Newcastle's Lord Mayor and Lake Macquarie's Mayor were joined by Lord Mayors from Newcastle upon Tyne and Portsmouth for a special bicentennial lunch.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.